Good morning. Good to be back. And now I know this is the beginning of the rest of my life. Whatever it'll bring, I am indeed cancer free. And I know I don't have to worry now for years. I took the PET scan one more time as I was instructed, and that's it. So I am ecstatic. Personally, I'm really happy. Professionally, just like John Quincy Adams, though I haven't attained all that he has, I feel there's much more for me to do. In this country, we're not like the people who have received the Nobel Prizes. Thank God we're not in Russia, where Memorial just received a Nobel Peace Prize for their work as activists and advocates for freedom and liberty. A Belarusian man who's in jail has been awarded the Peace Prize for trying to go against his repressive regime. I will say that the folks in Russia, they had to suspend operations because they were reporting on what's happening in Russia and the repression and against the Ukrainian war, and they were shut down. In Ukraine, there is a group of civil liberty folks who are investigating the Russian atrocities. And so far, they've uncovered at least 1,000 people, 1,000 bodies in mass graves, and 22 torture sites. It's interesting that when Russians are captured by Ukrainians, some of them are so fearful that they've actually blown themselves up rather than face the same, they think, torture than they've been perpetrating. But that's not happening in the Ukrainian mind. They don't want to commit crimes against humanity. They just want to stop it. And that's how I feel. Sure, we don't have a battlefield per se in America, but we really do. We're fighting men in suits. It's our economic way of life that's really destroying Americans. When you think about it, why should we have 7 years less mortality than other Western nations? Why shouldn't we have health care for everyone? Why do we use prisons to imprison millions of people and for crimes that are minimal? Sure, we're letting people out of jail for being caught with marijuana, but some of these folks didn't belong there to begin with in some of the federal prisons. And what are they? They're fodder for industry. They create the products that cost so little in our country. Or they're just there to generate profits for a corporation that's totally unaccountable for what it's doing. Doesn't seem like that's the right way for us to be going. This is indeed a capitalist society where profit comes first and people and labor and everyone else comes second. Oh, the folks at the top, they can make millions, and they do, but they're not taxed on those millions, and they should be, because if they were taxed on it, just like we're taxed on the first $142,800, if they were taxed for payroll deduction and FICA, just like the middle and lower classes are, we'd have a lot of money in our treasury. a lot to fund the innovations that we need. So we're suffering from tyranny in this country. Sure, they're the same men in suits, the same folks who want to dictate what women can do with their bodies, the same folks who would be banning books, the same folks who are decreasing our lifespan and making sure that we don't have equal access to electric power, power in general, and health care, and education. All of that is curtailed so that a few can lead. And our laws have made it so. When you think about it, you go back to the midterms of the Clinton years. And when you go back there and you see the GOP control of Congress, and you follow the money and you follow the legislation that was overturned, it's pretty easy to find out why now we don't have as much freedom as we think we should, or we think we do. Remember, they overturned Glass-Steagall in those days, which made banks safe. And then not until the crash of 2008 did we have to come up with another banking bill to make our monetary system safe again. They overturned the lobbying laws and the laws that created lobbyists to begin with. Used to be, it was a 7-year hiatus between working in government, regulating an industry, and then going into that industry. Well, thanks to Newt Gingrich, we had a revolving door. Sure, government was then able to seamlessly form with business, and only business interests were what mattered, and business was unaccountable. And these were still early days for technology, and that's when they wrote Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Section 230 made it impossible for any person to sue a social media platform. They had no liability for transferring our data to third parties. Not only that, you can't sue technology companies for their content either. So when people beg and they say, why aren't you decent? They don't have to be decent. Not only that, if they were decent, that would mean that Section 230 of the law no longer protects them. They can't afford to not win these cases. Everyone knows this happened how many years ago? Late 90s? And now we're paying the piper. So when you see the erosion of our laws and what's happened to our society, the question is not why did Donald Trump get as far as he did, but how come it took so long? Because they have the power. You're going to the polls this November. Vote them out. If you want to have your civil liberties, if you want to have control over your own body and reproductive rights, if you want to have a good education, which includes science and math and an understanding of our history, because if you don't understand our history, how can you understand what's happened to our laws and who was in control and who was responsible? It's our history, folks. I don't know if you like this late stage capitalism I don't, because it's not good for our children and our grandchildren, nor is it good for us. Remember, if those Republicans who are pro-Trump get into power, we don't know what they're going to do to the ACA or Social Security. I think you can't let them into power again. You cannot reflexively press that lever. The unfortunate thing is, most of you don't even know that if you're following social media, everything that you put on the World Wide Web is for sale. And it could be tracking you, and it could be tracking you wherever you are. So young women do have reason to be afraid, because if the law of their state bans abortions, then the social media company will be able to give where you are and what you're doing to law enforcement, because you've broken the law. They haven't. They have the power to do whatever they want with our data. Think you're covered by HIPAA? You're not covered by HIPAA. No privacy whatsoever. Do we really want corporations to determine what we see, what we think, what we hear, and what we eat, and what we read? I don't think so. You might, but I don't think that that's a way I want to be. For me, I like to question what's happening to my data. I like to question what's happening to my world as I see it. And I know that the time is now to rewrite a lot of the laws that are on the books that concentrate power in a few hands and don't give it to the many. If you want to see equality and a thriving middle class, you can't vote for that Republican Party that thinks only corporations, big corporations, and profit matter. We matter. We, the people, we're the engine that powers the corporation, and we are not disposable. If we were in Tsarist Russia or in Russia today, there would be two classes, the elite class and the serfs. We're becoming almost no different. We have more oligarchs here in the United States than they have in Russia. The only thing we don't have is one or all-powerful monarch, czar, whatever, president. But our laws are making us bound. Bound in the mind, bound in spirit, and bound in how much money the rest of us can make. What we need are new laws to replace the old. We need corporate responsibility because we want to be funding innovators and entrepreneurs. I read the other day that Israel is now able to connect solar power in remote areas through sound waves. Sounds like something from outer space. Same thing with what's happening with the Nobel Prize for Physics, where you've got two separate bodies that can somehow act as one. When you do that, that's what Einstein calls the spookiness theory. And when you do that, you're able to have advances in quantum physics, which means that we might actually be able to build that elevator into the sky and go to distant stars. Not with today's technology, but with an advanced technology. Which is another reason why we can't afford the tyranny of the corporation. Unaccountable corporations with no competitiveness means we will just be reinventing the same wheel. Well, when we're running out of water and we're running out of food and people are dying because of hurricanes and people are dying because of floods and others because of drought, says to me, this is not a time to have corporations that are unaccountable. Same thing goes for the internet. That Section 230, it was written before the internet really got its boost with Facebook, Google, Twitter, Snapchat, Flock, you name it. There's a whole world of internet companies, providers, media folks who are now responsible solely for the content that we see. And unfortunately, that content is harmful to we, the people. Just look around you. Look at the culture wars that we've perpetuated. Look at what's happening with the vaccine denial. Look at the climate denial. Look at what's happening with big oil when big oil is able to do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, because there are no controls. I say, yeah, there's going to be temporary inflation, but if we provide jobs for everyone, we don't really have to worry about it. So I'm fighting those men in suits, those men who talk softly and rewrite our laws and make it so that we don't have a voice. I'm fighting them the only way I can, by speaking up and speaking out. It started before Newt Gingrich, but this revolution that is enslaving us in body and mind, that's part of corporate ascendancy. Corporations being more powerful than we the people. Corporations purchasing politicians and making sure that they're writing the laws that they favor, not that favor us or represent us. So here in America, it's economics that's binding us body and soul. In other areas, it's a little bit more blatant. We just hide behind prisons when we put 16 million into jails, or however many they are, and then we take away their voting rights. So we do it in a very civilized manner. But it's tyranny, nonetheless. It's economic tyranny. You can bet on it. And that's what I fight for, to get rid of the economic tyranny, to get rid of the inequality that I see before us, because it's possible to do with the right folks in government who will listen to other people and write laws that favor us, we the people. As they say in Hebrew, Hineni, I am here. I'm here for us. And boy, would I like all advocates and all activists to join together. Then we have a huge voice. everyone who's working on redesigning Section 230 so that it reflects our privacy and it gives us back the privacy and the ability to love in private. So it gives us back our lives and stops the hatred and the violence. I'm for rewriting Section 230. I'm also for antitrust. I'm also for accountability, not just for folks who make a small living, that they're on a GPS 100% of the time. No siree. I want to know my life is private, so's yours, and we can pursue the good life. Can't do it without innovation. So take care, everyone, and have a beautiful day. Bye now.